Welcome to Story Bazaar, a quiet little marketplace of tales, whispers, and half-forgotten scrolls. The kind of place where stories don't shout, they settle in beside you, like an old friend at the end of a long day. Tonight, our stall is draped in Roman red and dusted with the quiet paperwork of history. We're not here for emperors or epic battles. No drama, no swords, just the soothing, frustratingly detailed hum of ancient taxes, tariffs, fees, and the deeply Roman tradition of charging you for things you didn't know had prices. The setting? Rome. Not the glorious, marble-painted version you've seen in films. No, this is everyday Rome. The Rome of merchants and toll booths, of public toilets and tax scrolls. The Rome that could and did find a way to monetize almost everything. Yes, they even taxed urine. Yes, that's a real thing. We'll get to that part. Promise. But for now, get comfortable, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And if this video helps you feel cozy, calm, and just a little bit more curious, go ahead and give it a like. And if you're new here, maybe subscribe and join our little sleepy history family. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is, so feel free to drop a comment and say hello. And if there's a strange corner of the past you'd like us to wander through next, tell me. This bazaar always has room for one more scroll. Now then, let's set the mood. You're not a famous general or noble. You're just you, a traveler, maybe a merchant, maybe someone trying to sell a few fish and get home before the sun scorches your sandals. You've arrived at the edge of Rome. The gates are in sight. The breeze is warm. The air smells like olive oil and ambition. And just as you step forward, someone stops you. They're not a soldier. They're worse. They're a customs officer. They ask what you're carrying. You say, just grain and a few amphorae of wine. They nod. Then they point to a wooden desk with a scroll, an inkwell, and a man who looks like he's been charging tolls since the invention of rocks. Welcome to your first portoria, a Roman import tax. You've only just entered the city, and already, the empire wants a slice of whatever you've brought with you. Not because you're doing anything wrong, just because you're doing anything at all. Moving goods? That's taxable. Breathing near goods? Questionable. Thinking about moving goods? That'll be assessed at the current mental tariff rate. You hand over a few coins, unsure if that was for the grain or just the privilege of walking. The clerk doesn't explain. He just grunts, stamps a bit of parchment, and waves you on like a mildly annoyed tree. So you keep going, past the gates, into the city, and the sound of taxes being collected hums in the background like a very bureaucratic lullaby. Coins clinking, quills scratching, a donkey braying somewhere in the distance, possibly out of protest. You don't realize it yet, but this is just the beginning. Tariffs are waiting for you on every corner, on every item, on every breath, if they could figure out how to measure it. And remember, we haven't even gotten to the part about P. That's later. For now, keep walking. Rome is vast, and your wallet is about to feel very small. You're only a few steps past the city gate, and already your coin pouch feels lighter. That toll, that was just the appetizer. Because Rome doesn't stop at the gate, it's just getting warmed up. You pass a row of stalls, traders shouting, oxen pulling carts, children darting through the crowd like tiny chaotic tax liabilities. Everything is busy. Everything is loud. But mostly, everything is being taxed. You stop to admire a basket of figs. They look ripe, soft, probably overpriced. The merchant smiles at you the way a man does when he's seen too many confused travelers. You point at the fruit. He gives you a number. You frown. He shrugs and gestures behind him toward a man at a wooden table with a tiny scale and a scroll. The fiscus. Not a god, not a noble, just a bureaucrat with the power to make your day more expensive. Every piece of fruit sold inside the city is taxed. Not at the stall, at the source. The tax was already paid, probably, but just in case, there's another small fee. Call it a handling surcharge. Call it a civic offering, call it what it is. A tradition of overcharging passed down like a proud, unwelcome heirloom. You walk away from the figs, You weren't hungry anyway. Further in, you pass a man with a cart full of amphorae clay jars sealed with wax and hope. He's sweating, not from the weight, from the waiting. A customs inspector is slowly tapping each jar, asking questions, scribbling notes. The merchant nods, grins, slips him a coin. You wonder if that's a bribe or just another tariff you weren't aware of. Probably both. Now you start to notice it everywhere. A woman selling wool by the handful taxed. A man offering rides in a squeaky wooden cart taxed. A boy holding out a tray of meat pies almost definitely taxed, though you're not sure if it's for the food or the tray. You duck into a shaded alley to catch your breath. The heat is building, the smells are mixing bread, sweat, wine, and just a hint of civil exhaustion. Someone's counting coins nearby. You listen, the rhythm is fast, too fast. They've done this before. Probably a tax collector. Probably preparing change for people who don't have the right coins, which means they'll end up paying more anyway. You glance down at your own pouch. Fewer coins than before, fewer still by the end of the day. You wonder how anyone survives this place. Then you remember you're in Rome. No one survives here by avoiding taxes. They survive by navigating them, ducking, dodging, occasionally pretending they only speak Etruscan when the collector shows up. You sigh, not because you're upset. You're too tired for that. It's the kind of sigh reserved for someone who's realized their pockets are slowly being emptied by a system that was invented before socks. You step back out into the Sunday. You walk past another official. He barely looks at you, but you hear the faint rustle of parchment in his hand. Somewhere, your name might already be on a list. You nod politely. He doesn't nod back. It's fine. You're not here to make friends. You're here to make it through a day in Rome without going broke. And that might already be impossible. You're getting used to the rhythm now. Not the rhythm of the streets, those are chaos with better sandals. No, the rhythm of Roman taxation. You buy something, they tax it. You think about buying something, they tax that too. You breathe in sharply at the price. Careful, they're probably working on a breath tariff. You find a small bakery tucked between two pillars. The smell alone is divine, yeasty, smoky, warm, like a hug from someone who's slightly burned but means well. You haven't eaten yet, and this seems like a good idea. You step closer. The baker, a man with arms like cured ham and eyebrows that might be sentient, sees you coming. He gestures to a basket of flatbread, golden, crisp-edged, dusted with herbs. You reach for your pouch. He stops you. No, not yet. He points to a chalkboard. It lists prices, then it lists fees, bread tax, oven use tax, city zone tax, temple contribution, in quotation marks, no less, and a small charge for seasonal flower variants. You stare at the board, you blink. You start to feel like the bread is watching you back, wondering if you're worth the effort. You pay, because you're hungry, and because the idea of arguing with someone whose forearms look like they could bench press a chariot doesn't appeal to you right now. The bread is good, too good, suspiciously good. You wonder if you just paid for something you're not allowed to enjoy. But it's warm, and it's soft in the middle, and you needed this moment. Even if it cost you enough to fund a minor aqueduct, you continue walking, chewing slowly. The streets are alive with noise and heat, and the occasional shout of, "You didn't pay the stall fee," followed by the sound of sandals slapping stone in panic. At one corner, a man is selling perfumes, tiny glass bottles, each promising to make you smell like someone who can afford things. You slow down. He notices. He pounces. "Imported from Alexandria," he says, as if that's a defense against whatever scent is currently attacking your nose. You nod. He sees that as interest. He holds up a bottle and starts listing ingredients: flower essence, crushed bark, something called moon musk. You ask the price. He grins. Then he gestures behind him to another tax collector. This one looks bored. He's got a scroll in one hand, a feather in the other, and the posture of someone who's been underpaid for 2 decades. "The cent is 5 denarii, the merchant says. But there's a luxury goods levy, and an exotic imports tariff, and a smell-based status tax. I can offer a slight discount if you claim it's for religious reasons. You decline, politely, mostly because you've never felt so judged by a feather before. As you walk away, you spot a boy carrying a tray of tiny figurines. Clay, probably. Each one shaped like a different Roman god. They look fragile, optimistic, slightly melted by the sundae. The boy doesn't say a word. He just holds up a hand. You nod. He nods back. Then he gestures to a tiny placard hanging from his belt. Divine representation tariff paid to stall #2 hour. Even the gods have paperwork. You shake your head, not in disbelief. That would require surprise. You're past that now. You're just impressed. This empire, with its roads and its legions, and its statues with slightly too small togas it runs on tariffs. Every scroll, every handshake, every bite of bread. And you're just trying to make it to the end of the day without having to sell your sandals. You step into the shade of a tall column, let the warm stones support your back, and exhale slowly. The good news? You haven't been arrested. The bad news? A man just handed you a parchment and said, "There's a resting fee for non-locals." You hand him a coin. He nods and disappears. You didn't even ask for a receipt. You leave the alley behind, your coin pouch a little emptier, your spirit still mostly intact. Rome has a way of draining you slowly, not with battles or betrayals, just with very persistent clerks. You pass by a woman selling dyed fabric, beautiful stuff. Reds, purples, even a green so vibrant it looks smug. You pause. She doesn't speak, she just gestures to a wooden sign listing prices, not just for the cloth, but for each color. The rarer the dye, the higher the tax. Of course, you learn that purple, in particular, is nearly sacred. The dye is made from thousands of tiny sea snails crushed into oblivion for the honor of staining togas. It's reserved for the wealthy, and taxed accordingly. You consider a swatch of blue, then notice a guard watching from across the plaza, clearly trained to detect tax evasion by squinting at fabric choices. You move on. Next, you see a man offering haircuts in a shaded corner. A makeshift barber's stall, chair and all. You're tempted. Your reflection in a still puddle earlier suggested you're halfway to hermit with tax debt. But a sign hanging from the back of the stall stops you cold. Service tax, grooming license, sharp object, surcharge. You nod to the barber. He nods back. It's an understanding between two people who both know a haircut is not worth 3 separate government filings. You keep walking. At the next turn, you're met with a street musician playing a lyre. The music is soft, a little melancholy. You drop a coin into his bowl, and he gives you a grateful nod. Moments later, a man with a wax tablet approaches the musician. They speak quietly. You hear the word levy. Apparently, playing music in public, taxed. Accepting donations, taxed. Smiling appreciatively at a musical performance, unclear, but probably taxed soon. You slip away before someone asks if you've paid your appreciation fee. Further along, you stop to rest on the edge of a fountain. It's lovely carved stone, clean water, a faint smell of lavender. You let your legs dangle over the side, the cool marble a relief. Then a voice beside you, casual and quiet. Public fountain use is reserved for citizens with token slips. You blink. Even just sitting here? He shrugs. Rome is expensive. You give him a coin. He walks away, whistling. Whether he was official or just entrepreneurial, you're too tired to check. At this point, you're starting to realize something. The city isn't just running on taxes, it's breathing them. Every cobbled street, every marketplace shout, every moment of relief is part of a giant, invisible invoice. You pass a temple, the air shifts slightly quieter, calmer. A woman near the entrance sells candles. For offerings, she says. You ask the price. She lists it, then adds a small charge for blessing transmission. You ask what that means. She shrugs. Administrative. Of course. You don't argue. You buy a candle. It smells faintly of smoke and financial regret. The day wears on. The sun has begun its slow descent, painting everything gold. And while most cities might start to soften at this hour, Rome just sharpens. More guards, more scribes, more fees posted in places you didn't expect. A man walks by selling roasted nuts. You consider it. He points to a basket labeled "Nut Roasting Permit" displayed upon request. You nod. You don't even ask the price. You're adapting. Slowly, your steps grow slower, not just from fatigue, but from the creeping realization that you're spending more energy dodging bureaucracy than living. Still, there's a strange comfort in it, a rhythm, predictable in its own exhausting way. Rome doesn't hate you. It just wants you slightly poorer and a lot more compliant. You can work with that. For now, the streets begin to shift around you, narrower now, more crowded. You've wandered into one of Rome's older market districts. The buildings lean in a little here, their stones worn and weathered, like they've seen too many arguments over price and not enough sunshine. The market is alive, but not loud. It hums, like a beehive full of merchants instead of bees, all bartering, whispering, gesturing, counting. You notice something strange as you move from stall to stall. No one seems particularly joyful. There's business, yes. There's movement. But there's also tension, subtle and constant, like everyone's waiting for something or someone. Then you see him. He's not dressed like a soldier. No armor, no blade. Just a tunic that fits too well, and a sash that looks official. He carries a scroll. Not parchment. Waxed, so it doesn't smudge in the heat. His sandals are clean. Too clean for these dusty streets. You've met his kind before, in every city, in every age, the inspector. He walks slowly, calmly, like a cat in a room full of jumpy mice. One by one, he visits the merchants. They nod. Some hand him tokens. Others slip coins into a pouch that you notice only because it jingles with the sound of certainty. You try to blend in. Keep your eyes down. You're not doing anything wrong, but Rome doesn't need you to be wrong. Just available. A nearby vendor whispers. He's checking stall fees. Some haven't paid since the last market rezoning. You don't ask what rezoning means. You already know it's a word that translates loosely to, "We found a new way to charge you." You drift to a table selling glass beads. The merchant gives you a tired smile, the kind that says, "Please don't make me explain the pricing." You pick up a bead. It's smooth, cool, translucent with a swirl of blue that catches the light just right. "How much?" you ask. He glances around before answering. 3 for the bead, 1 for the trade tax, half for the street license, and, he leans in, "If you pay in full now, I can waive the temporary goods placement adjustment fee." You nod. You don't even know what that last one means, but it sounds like a limited time offer, and you're not in the mood to be fined for hesitation. You hand over the coins. He wraps the bead in a scrap of linen and thanks you. You thank him back, not for the bead, but for making the transaction slightly less painful than average. You turn to leave the stall and nearly walk into the inspector. He looks at you, not unkindly. Not kindly either, just administratively. He raises a brow. "Did you collect a goods transfer receipt?" You blink. He gestures to the wrapped bead in your hand. You think fast. "The merchant said it was included." The inspector holds out his hand. You give him another coin. He smiles. It's not a mean smile. It's worse. It's a bureaucrat's smile, the kind that says, "I don't enjoy this, but I'm very, very good at it." He nods and walks away, already eyeing a woman selling wine from jugs that definitely look too full to be properly licensed. You step out of the market slowly. Your bead is still in your hand. Now officially, fully, legally yours. You're not sure if that's comforting or just expensive. By now, you've accepted that everything in Rome costs something. Space, smell, thought. You've been taxed for standing, for buying, for pausing too long in a breeze that may or may not have been municipally owned. But nothing, and you mean nothing, has prepared you for what's coming next. You turn down a side street. It's quieter here. Less shouting, more dripping. The stone walls close in slightly, casting long shadows that cool the air just enough to feel suspicious. Then you see them. Jars. Dozens of them. Big ones, small ones, ceramic and wood. All lined up along the wall like offerings at the altar of hygiene. You think, are these for oil? Wine? Something nice? You're wrong. A man walks past carrying a sloshing jug with a smell that stops you in your tracks. He doesn't even flinch. He pours the contents, yellow, unmistakable, into a large collection vat. Then he wipes his hands on his tunic like this is the most ordinary moment of his week. Someone nearby catches your expression. First time seeing the piss pots? He asks, amused. You nod slowly, trying not to breathe. He grins. It's all taxed, of course. Everything in Rome is. But this one's special. You've heard of strange taxes before. You've seen the scrolls. But this, he explains, urine in Rome is valuable. Not for drinking, not even they went that far, but for cleaning. The ammonia content made it ideal for bleaching fabrics and tanning leather. And so, Emperor Vespasian, never one to let opportunity leak away, introduced a tax on it, vectigal urine. It sounds elegant. It is not. Public urinals, really just large pots placed along the street, were collected daily by fullers, that is, people who cleaned cloth professionally. They paid for the privilege. The urine was then processed, used, reused, and definitely not talked about during dinner, and of course, taxed at every stage. You stare at the jars again. Suddenly, they look less like containers and more like coin purses. The man keeps going. The best part, he says, clearly enjoying himself now. Vespasian's son Titus, he mocked the idea. Said it was beneath the dignity of Rome. You raise a brow. And he got a coin flicked at his face. His father said, money doesn't stink. Pecunia non olet, a phrase born in a puddle of human waste and sealed into history forever. You look around. Men pass by with buckets, tongs, scoops. It's a full-blown industry. You never thought you'd see an entire economy run on this. But Rome is nothing if not practical, or ruthless, or both. You watch as a small boy empties a chamber pot into one of the larger vats. He whistles a little tune, then hands off the pot to someone with an official-looking tag on their belt. There's probably a form, a stamp, a licensing fee. You're about to move on when someone taps your shoulder. You turn. Public relief tax, the man says, holding out a hand. In case you use the jars. You haven't. You swear you haven't. He shrugs. Everyone does eventually. You give him a coin, just to be safe. He thanks you and walks off, whistling the same tune as the boy. Maybe it's the official theme song of the Roman sanitation department. You step away carefully, very carefully, and as you return to the main street, one thought follows you. Rome can and will tax anything, even what leaves your body. You manage to shake the smell from your clothes, though not from your memory. The sour tang of bureaucracy mixed with ammonia is not easily forgotten. Still, you press on. Rome waits for no one, and certainly not for someone hesitating near a vat of taxable bodily fluids. You follow the main road back toward the Forum. It's busier now. The kind of busier that feels structured. Like someone, somewhere, is counting the feet that pass by and sending an invoice. A man near the road waves you over. He's standing beside a wooden box with a curtain. A small sign reads, refreshment, shade and air. 2 sesterces. You blink. Shade. And air. He opens the curtain. Inside is a tiny bench. A fan operated by hand. A bowl of herbs steaming in a shallow tray. It smells vaguely like rosemary and defeat. You ask, is this a resting booth? He nods proudly. Certified by the guild. Approved by the council. You pay for 10 minutes of coolness, quiet, and fragrance. All legal. You step back, not because you aren't tempted, but because you're afraid of what comes next. A surcharge for sighing, a bonus fee for moments of reflection, maybe even an emotional balance levy. You nod politely and continue. Just beyond, a group of children play beside a fountain. They toss pebbles into the water, making small ripples. Laughter echoes briefly. Then a woman rushes over, older, sharp-eyed. She points to a plaque on the wall. You squint. It's partially worn, but the words are still clear. Use of civic water feature for leisure activity must be registered with municipal clerk #48. The children scatter. You stand there alone, reading the plaque again, wondering what kind of society taxes joy by the splash. A nearby vendor sees your face. First time seeing a water use license? He asks. You nod. Again. He laughs, but without humor. Don't worry, they haven't figured out how to tax breathing yet. You raise an eyebrow. He leans in. But I hear there's a proposal. They're calling it an ambient inhalation responsibility fund. You laugh. He doesn't. The forum looms ahead, now huge, columned, echoing with voices and sandals and law. You cross into its shadow, careful not to look too interested in anything. That alone could cost you. To the left, a man selling scrolls, law, history, poetry, each one neatly wrapped, tagged, and priced. To the right, a man offering public readings of those same scrolls. But if you stop to listen, a small boy with a tray of wax tablets will appear and politely inform you that performances of literary content require a listener's fee. You nod. You've learned your lesson. Instead, you pass between the two, reading nothing, listening to no one, thinking only mildly taxed thoughts. Up ahead, a group of foreign traders is being interrogated gently by two guards and what looks like a mobile customs table. There are coins, scrolls, and some yelling in 3 languages. You see a bag of spices being confiscated, not because it's illegal, but because the traders declared it as aromatic trade flour to dodge an import tariff. Clever. Ineffective. One of the guards pulls out a measuring rod. The other starts writing. You do not stick around to see how this ends. Instead, you find a low wall and sit briefly. A man appears. You brace yourself. He doesn't ask for money, just hands you a slip of papyrus. This is not a fee, it's a notice. Sitting without movement for more than 15 minutes may incur a loitering evaluation. You nod. You stand. You keep walking. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder, how does this city even function? But then again, maybe this is exactly how it functions. Through pressure, through procedures, through 1,000 tiny tolls that no one notices until they're knee-deep in receipts and no closer to home. The sun is starting to dip just slightly. Not enough to cool the air, but enough to make the shadows longer and more dramatic, as if even light has to file extra paperwork before it can clock out. You find yourself on a street that feels slightly more refined. The stones are smoother, the buildings taller. There are fewer carts here, and more silk. More polished sandals. More people speaking Latin with the kind of precision that suggests they're used to being listened to and never questioned. You're in the zone of registered merchants now. How do you know? Because a sign above a nearby door says, "Approved for Class 2 transactions by the Guild of Civic Commerce, Quarter 3 edition." It sounds impressive. It means nothing. You pause to look at a shop that sells writing tools, quills, ink, parchment. The merchant greets you with a smile too bright to be spontaneous. You point at a quill. It's sleek, goose feather, silver cap, probably writes as well as it charges. The merchant clears his throat. Ah, yes, that one comes with a 5-part receipt. You blink. 5? He nods, pulling out a scroll already half filled with ink. One for the item itself, one for the materials imported, one for the artisan's labor, one for the street vendor authorization, and one for the carbon consumption declaration. You don't ask what carbon means in this context. You know better by now. Instead, you say, "I was just looking." He nods again, this time with the weary grace of a man who expected as much. You leave, carrying nothing but mild regret. A few steps later, a young girl approaches. She offers you a tiny wax tablet with a smile. "Survey?" You hesitate. She adds, "No charge." For now, you take it. It's a customer satisfaction form about the street itself. Did you find the paving stones agreeable? Were the vendor arrangements pleasing? How likely are you to recommend Forum Vicus East to a friend? At the bottom is a note. Filing this survey may result in a participation thank you fee. Should your feedback require processing, you hand the tablet back, untouched. She thanks you anyway and skips off. You turn down another lane and come face to face with something almost otherworldly. A receipt wall, an entire stretch of stone plastered in drying parchment, hundreds of them, some curled at the edges, some still damp with ink. Stamped, marked, pinned in place with little bronze fasteners. It's not art, it's storage. Someone, maybe many someones, has run out of room to hold their records and has begun displaying them like civic wallpaper. You step closer. Each receipt is dated, named, itemized. You find one for intermittent shade access, another for peripheral bread exposure. One simply says, "Existence fee, waived." You don't know whether to laugh or cry, so you just stare. Eventually, a man wanders over, carrying a new scroll. He finds a gap in the wall, presses it in with a sigh, and walks off again. No drama, no explanation. Just another line in a very, very long ledger. You step back. You walk away. You don't want your name on that wall. Not yet. You take a turn down a narrower street, cooler here, shaded by laundry lines and balconies that lean a little too far forward, like they're listening in. The cobbles under your feet are uneven, cracked, patched, walked on by too many people trying to stay under the radar of Rome's fee collectors. Your stomach reminds you again that it has needs. You follow the scent of something boiling, an optimistic smell. Maybe lentils, maybe hope. You find a stall, just a pot, 2 stools, and a man with a beard that could probably file its own taxes. You sit. He nods once and ladles something into a clay bowl. It's thick, beige, vaguely nutritious. You don't ask what's in it. You already know the answer is, whatever was cheapest this morning. You're halfway through your first bite when another man sits down beside you. Middle-aged, tired eyes. Wears his tunic like it betrayed him. He doesn't say hello. Just mutters, "It cost more yesterday." You glance over. The lentils, he clarifies. They were cheaper last week, before the grain sellers union started arguing about who gets to bribe which official. You nod slowly. They say it's temporary, he adds. They always say that. The bearded cook grunts from behind the pot. Was temporary last year too. The man beside you sighs. It's the kind of sigh you've been hearing more and more around the city. Not loud, not angry, just steady. The sigh of people adapting in real time to being quietly squeezed. I work with mosaics, he says suddenly. Little tiles, ceilings, the good stuff. Temple floors sometimes, if I'm lucky. You nod again, not sure what this has to do with soup. Last week I had to raise my rates, he says. Again. Not because of materials. Just to cover the new permit for decorative work. He takes a bite, chews like it's paperwork. Client didn't even argue. Just looked at me and said, "Everyone's adding something these days. Like it's a condiment. Like fees are just part of the flavor." The cook snorts. They are. Another pause. The street murmurs around you, distant wheels, voices, someone yelling about laundry laws again. You ask him, quietly, "Is it always like this?" The man shrugs. "Only when Rome's stable. When things are bad, they raise taxes. When things are good, they raise them again. People don't protest anymore. We just talk in code." Code? He points at his bowl. "This isn't lentils. This is optimism." Then he lifts his spoon. This is what I tell my wife I paid for." "The actual price?" That's between me and my accountant. You smile a little. Not because it's funny. Because you finally understand the joke everyone's been quietly surviving. He finishes his food, wipes his mouth, leaves a coin and a pebble on the counter. The cook nods like that makes perfect sense. You watch him walk off. You don't know his name, but you know exactly what kind of life he's living. You finish your bowl in silence, and when you stand, you find yourself sighing too, just enough to be noticed by no one. The streets feel heavier now, not crowded, just dense. Like the city's pressing in a little more with each step. You pass a column where someone's carved a face into the stone. Not a god, not a hero, just a man, frowning slightly, eyes looking downward like he's reading a receipt he didn't authorize. You relate to him. You turn a corner and find yourself beside a group of people huddled near a doorway. Not begging, not protesting, just talking, quietly, like the sound itself might be metered. One of them looks up. "You lost?" he asks. You shake your head. He nods. "Then you must live here." That gets a few chuckles from the group. Not loud, but real. They make space for you. Someone passes around a jug of watered wine. You take a sip. It tastes like a memory of grapes. The man who first spoke leans in. "We're waiting for the inspector to leave." You glance around. No one official in sight. "He's behind the bakery," someone else adds, "counting grain crates. Been at it 2 hours. We're not moving until he gives up." "Because you're hiding something?" "No," the first man says. "Because if he sees us walking together, we might get charged as a group. Informal assembly usage tax. It's a thing now." Another chuckle. This one sharper. You sit, they talk. About prices. About how salt's up again. About how weddings now require an oath not just to each other, but to the treasury. About a neighbor fined for repainting her door without submitting a hue variance request. "It wasn't even a new color," someone mutters. "Just cleaned." Someone else adds. "They say if you smile too long near the forum, they'll assume you've heard good news and want a cut." You don't ask if that's a joke. You're not sure anymore. They keep talking. Not complaining, just keeping score, making sure they're all still playing the same losing game. A woman gestures at your cloak. "Nice stitching. Did you declare that yourself, or buy it pre-approved?" You pause. She grins. "Kidding, mostly." You relax just a little, only a little. Eventually, one of them stands, peers around the corner, gives a small nod. Clear. The group stands too, quietly. One by one, they walk off in different directions, like petals from a broken flower. You stand too. The woman with the joke stitching gives you a nod. "See you next audit." You nod back. You walk away. Not quickly, just carefully. There's something strange about how this city moves. Like everyone is in the same story but reading different chapters. No riots, no marches. Just murmurs, muted laughter. Eye rolls passed around like secret currency. And maybe that's the most Roman thing of all, not the grandeur, not the marble, not the gods perched on every roof, but the way everyone's learned to live beneath the weight of invisible rules. Not by breaking them, just by leaning sideways, so they slide off a little easier. You walk a little slower now, not because you're tired, though you are, but because the city keeps throwing quiet surprises at you. Rome doesn't shout its absurdities. It lays them gently at your feet, one by one, like an over-enthusiastic cat. The lane ahead is crooked, uneven. You wouldn't even call it a proper road. Just a long stretch of stone between 2 rows of overhanging buildings that drip laundry and kitchen smells in equal measure. At the far end, there's a man sitting on a low stool. Beside him, a wooden box, a pile of parchment, and a face that's been sunburnt into neutrality. He isn't bored. He isn't eager. He just is. As you near him, he holds up a hand. "Passing fee," he says. You blink. "For this street?" He nods. "Privately maintained. Semi-public. You want to use the road, you pay the toll." You look down at the stone under your feet. It doesn't look new, or special, or remotely maintained. You raise an eyebrow. He adds, there's a drainage pipe under it, technically civic infrastructure. But the stones? Those are guild-funded. You're about to argue, but then you spot something behind him. A plaque. Not fancy, just carved into the stone. Vicinal passage authorized by Sub-Council #7. All crossings subject to comfort grading and length. You sigh. You reach for a coin. He takes it, marks a scroll, waves you on. As you walk past, he calls out, you came in at an angle. That counts as a quarter-length surcharge. You freeze, you turn, he smiles. Kidding. You're not sure if that makes it better or worse. You keep going. Halfway down the lane, a boy runs past with a chicken under one arm and a basket under the other. He bumps into you slightly and mutters, sorry, can't stop, chasing the tax window. You stare after him. Someone nearby explains, certain food goods are untaxed if you move them between districts before midday, but you have to make it before the bell. That kid's on the clock. You nod slowly. It's impressive and exhausting, and exactly the kind of behavior a city like Rome teaches its children not how to read, but how to sprint between loopholes. At the end of the lane you pause. You turn and look back. You see the toll man, still seated, marking something with a dull stylus. You see laundry swaying above you like surrender flags. You see shadows carving out prices on things that should be free. And you realize this street, this broken, awkward stretch of uneven stone, it might be the most honest part of the city. Because at least here, the toll was announced. You paid it, you crossed. There were no surprises, no decorative footwear citations, no air freshness index surcharges. Just a man, a price, a choice. You walk on. The sun is lower now, brushing the tops of the roofs with gold. Somewhere nearby, a bell rings, the kind that says lunch is over and accountability is back on duty. A woman across the street is shouting at a delivery boy, not in anger, in calculation. She's explaining why the goods she ordered are now worth less than the taxes he paid to bring them. He argues that he had to bribe a gatekeeper. She counters that the bribe was his problem, not hers. They both nod at the end. No one wins, but at least they've agreed on the math of it. You pass them quietly, and as you do, you start to realize Rome isn't trying to rob you. It's just trying to make sure it gets paid before you run out of things to give. You pass into a calmer part of the city, where the walls are cleaner and the streets seem to breathe a little easier. The crowds thin out, replaced by gentle conversation and the faint smell of incense carried on the breeze. Ahead, a modest temple rests in a sun-dappled square. Not grand or gilded, just peaceful. The kind of place where the marble is worn smooth from everyday devotion. You pause, not to pray, just to notice. Outside, a woman is arranging small terracotta figures on a cloth. Gods, spirits, ancestral symbols, all placed with care, each facing a particular direction, as if they're watching over more than just her little table. They're beautiful, you say. She looks up with a soft smile. They're made nearby, blessed by the temple. Some people like to keep one near the hearth. You pick up a figure, Venus, holding a dove. Her expression is serene, the clay cool to the touch. Something about it feels like comfort in miniature. How much? You ask. She points gently toward a wooden sign, handwritten. 6 denarii. That includes the figure and a small blessing token, if you'd like it. You nod. There's no push, no pitch, just the quiet economy of tradition. She adds, almost apologetically, the token helps the temple keep records. We had some confusion last season, too many gifts without names, and a few well-meaning folks leaving offerings in the wrong shrine. You smile. Is that a problem? She shrugs. Not a problem. Just a little chaotic. Rome likes its rituals tidy. You place the figure back down with care and thank her. She nods again, not expecting a sale, just sharing a moment. You move on, drawn down a side street lined with small houses and shaded by crooked trees. A few children run past, chasing a bouncing ball that looks handmade from scraps of leather and hope. One of them pauses beside you. "You got change for a census token?" You blink. "Census?" He nods. "My dad forgot his. They won't let him through the district gate without it. I get a scroll if I help." You raise an eyebrow. "They're giving out scrolls now," he explains. "With drawings, pictures of the emperor shaking hands with people. It's sort of festive." You give him a coin. He grins and bolts off. A nearby vendor laughs softly. "Kid's clever. He'll trade that scroll for lunch." You don't doubt it. Farther down, you find a quiet garden space, just a patch of soil and olives growing slow and steady, reaching for the Sunday. A man trims the branches, careful and practiced. "Want to sit?" he asks. You nod and settle onto a low wall. He doesn't talk for a while, just works. The silence is calm, real. Eventually he says, "These trees feed my family." You glance at him. He adds, "I used to plant without asking anyone. Now there are forms, placement reviews. But that's all right. If the trees thrive, the rest is manageable." You nod. The branches sway above you, olive leaves whispering old stories. "I just hope," he says, "we don't get to the point where sunlight needs approval." You chuckle, and so does he. You leave a coin on the bench when you rise, not out of obligation, just because something about the moment felt worth acknowledging, and then you walk on. You follow the path out of the olive garden slowly, letting the quiet cling to your shoulders just a bit longer before rejoining the city's rhythm. It's not gone, not entirely, but in Rome, stillness is a rare thing. And like anything rare, someone somewhere has probably figured out how to charge for it. The streets gradually grow louder. Not busy, exactly, but alive. Two men are arguing about cart placement. One insists the other is 2 paces over the district line. And that means different regulations, different tariffs, a different set of stamps. The other says his wheels haven't moved in days, and the line itself is crooked. A third man, walking past, mutters, "Just pay each other to stop arguing," and keeps moving. You take a turn into a quieter lane, drawn by the sound of fabric flapping gently in the breeze. It leads you to a small courtyard lined with cloth stalls. Garments hang in every direction, tunics, cloaks, shawls, all dyed in soft, muted colors. A woman tends one of the stalls, folding and unfolding cloth as if she's measuring time instead of material. You approach slowly, hands tucked behind your back, just looking. She doesn't say anything at first, just watches you watch the cloth. Eventually, you ask, "Do people still buy color?" She raises an eyebrow. "Of course. Color's the only rebellion left that doesn't leave a mark." You glance down at a faded tunic dyed a dull green. The tag beside it is handwritten, like all the others. "You dye these yourself?" She nods. "With local herbs. Safer than importing. Less paperwork." You trace your finger along the edge of the fabric. It's soft, worn, but strong. "I used to sell brighter colors," she says, a bit more quietly, "until they started enforcing seasonal pigment codes." You look up. "Seasonal?" She shrugs. "Apparently, bold yellows are only permitted in spring. Too cheerful for winter." You stare at her. She's not smiling. She's not joking. You laugh anyway. She does too, eventually. "You're not from here," she says. "Is it that obvious?" She nods. You still ask if things make sense. You think about that. As you're about to leave, she reaches under the stall and pulls out a thin strip of cloth, undyed, unmarked, but folded carefully. "Here," she says. "It's nothing. But if anyone asks, it's a sample." You take it, not because you need it, because she offered it like a secret. You thank her and move on. Not far down the road, you spot a man sitting alone on a crate, staring into space, not sleeping, not resting, just pausing. You ask, "You all right?" He nods slowly, not looking at you, just trying to stay under the noise limit. You tilt your head. There's a new guideline, he explains. People who raise their voices too much in a public space can be cited for disruptive auditory presence. It's mostly aimed at street preachers and merchants, but who knows anymore? You sit next to him, carefully. So you're whispering by not talking at all? He nods again. You both stay quiet for a bit. Finally, he says, Rome wasn't always like this. There used to be music in the streets, poets shouting their verses at anyone who'd listen. Now you need a reading license. And if more than 5 people gather, someone shows up to count them. You glance around. No one's counting you yet. But here's the thing, he says. We still find ways. We talk softer. We move slower. We help each other dodge the forms. He looks at you now, really looks. Because no matter how complicated they make it, people still want to live. And that means color, and music, and talking for no reason. You nod. When you finally stand, he offers a hand. Next time they ask for my reason to be here, he says, I'll say I was showing someone where to find a quiet bench. You shake his hand and move on. The city ahead is humming again, but it sounds a little different now. Less like a machine, more like a dozen different hearts trying to beat in the same rhythm, even if the tempo changes every hour. You adjust the little strip of cloth in your hand. Maybe it's just fabric, or maybe it's your first smuggled rebellion. Either way, you're keeping it. The afternoon heat has settled in now, thick and full-bodied, like it's pressing down from above rather than rising from the stones beneath your feet. You find yourself drifting toward a quieter residential stretch. The kind of street that curves just slightly uphill, where pots of basil hang from windowsills and the air smells more like food than ambition. Your sandals scrape faintly as you move. The buildings here aren't fancy, but they're lived in. Painted shutters, uneven bricks, soft chatter behind closed doors. Rome, but slower. A small house to your left has its door open. A curtain flutters in the breeze, and from somewhere inside, the scent of stew rolls out. Herbs, garlic, maybe something with chickpeas again. Your stomach tugs gently. You linger near the doorway, just long enough to hear the clatter of a wooden spoon and someone humming. Then, a voice warm and flat. If you're standing there long enough to smell it, you may as well come in. You pause, blink, then step through the curtain like it's an invitation, because it is. Inside, the kitchen is plain but tidy. An older woman stirs a pot while 3 mismatched chairs gather dust around a table. There's no sign of other guests, just that general readiness people like her always seem to carry, as if visitors might appear the way clouds do, suddenly and without apology. Sit, she says. It's too hot to be polite, and I won't serve someone who hovers. You sit. She serves. The bowl is simple, the food hearty. Lentils again, but these taste richer, cooked slow, like someone had time today. She watches you eat for a moment, then wipes her hands and sits across from you. No charge, she says before you can reach for a coin. Just a conversation. You nod, mouth full. She asks where you're from. You answer vaguely. She doesn't press. Instead, she starts talking lightly, rhythmically, like she's ladling words from the same pot as the stew. I used to run a stall, she says. Textiles. Nothing fancy. Then the regulations changed. Needed a license for imported dyes. Then one for local threads. Then a separate one if I folded the cloth myself. You blink. You needed a license to fold cloth? She shrugs. If you sell it that way, yes. Presentation counts as processing. Or something like that. You don't ask how she made it work. The answer's already in the room, quiet, ladling stew, no longer folding cloth. She refills your bowl without asking. People think Rome is expensive because of gold, she says. But gold is just a number. What really costs is asking permission. You nod slowly. It makes more sense than you'd like. Outside, A bell rings soft and distant. Not a warning, not a curfew. Just time, reminding you it's still moving. She doesn't react. Neither do you. Eventually, she stands and begins tidying up with that same quiet energy you've come to recognize. The practiced rhythm of someone who survives by staying ahead of questions. I had a son, she says suddenly. Smart boy. Good with figures. Became a scribe. Then a tax clerk. Said he could help me cut through the paperwork. She smiles, just a little. 3 months later, he had to find me. Conflict of interest. He wrote it down himself. You say nothing. What could you possibly say? She waves it off. It's not his fault. He has a ledger to keep. I have a spoon. You offer thanks not just for the meal, but for the honesty. She waves that off too. We're all just trying to finish the day with fewer stamps than we started. You step out into the light again, bowl warm in your belly, sun hot on your shoulders. Behind you, the curtain flutters closed. Ahead, Rome continues. But now, you carry something different with you, something weightless and heavy at the same time. A conversation, no charge. The streets begin to buzz again as you head downhill, more footsteps, more voices, more carts trundling over the stone like they've been doing it since the invention of forward motion. The buildings widen out, taller now, balconies leaning into the air like they want a better look at the chaos below. You pass a public notice board, plastered with fresh parchment, some crisp, some fluttering like they're trying to escape. Most of it looks official, too official. You can always tell when something's been written by someone who's never had to follow their own instructions. A young man nearby is shouting, not angrily, just with energy. New edicts, fresh decrees. Hear what the council didn't want you to read. You stop just outside his circle, listening. He waves a hand-sized scroll in the air, dramatically. They say the grain subsidy is being restructured, which is fancy speech for cutting it in half and renaming the scraps. Murmurs ripple through the small crowd forming around him. A woman calls out, "And the meat levy?" He grins. Still in place. Now, with extra documentation required if your goat has a name. Laughter, nervous, real. You step a little closer. Another voice from the crowd. What about the fire brigade? Privatized, he shouts. Now fires are extinguished based on subscription tier. Groans. One man claps ironically. You ask quietly, "How do you know all this?" He taps the side of his head. "I used to copy records for a magistrate. Still have friends on the inside. They send me the scraps. I turn it into bedtime stories." Someone offers him a coin. He refuses. "I don't charge for bad news," he says. "Only good stories. And those are harder to find lately." You ask, "So why keep doing it?" He thinks for a second, then says, "Because the more people know, the less they panic. Rome doesn't like a panic, it's bad for the census." The crowd laughs again, this time a little lighter. He rolls up the scroll, tucks it into his belt, and moves on down the road, his voice trailing behind him like a street lamp lighting only the path he's already walked. You linger near the board. One notice catches your eye. Reminder: unauthorized summaries of public policy are subject to correction and fine. You decide not to read it twice. As you move on, you find yourself beside an old man seated on the steps of what looks like a crumbling courthouse. He's not asleep, just watching. You ask if the bench is taken. He chuckles. "This step? It's public. Until someone remembers it's worth something." You sit. He nods toward the space where the young man was standing. "I've seen 50 boys like him," he says. Smart mouths, loose hands. They read too much, speak too well. Rome chews on them. You ask, "And yet they keep coming?" He shrugs. "What else is there?" Can't tax silence. Not yet, anyway. You both watch the sun dip lower. The city glows gold and dust, the light painting everything just pretty enough to forget the paperwork behind it. "I used to write the laws," he says. "Way back. Nothing major. Just wording." I always thought, if I was careful, if I made the phrases clean, they'd be harder to twist. He pauses. Then, turns out, they just twisted the people instead. You don't say anything. He doesn't expect you to. After a while, he says, still, someone needs to remember what it was supposed to be. Even if that someone's just an old man on a step, you nod. He gestures for you to go on. You rise, and as you leave, he calls out, keep your ears sharp and your feet quiet. That's how we survive Rome. The city swells again in front of you, louder now, but not unbearable. Just complex, layered, expensive in ways no one writes down, and still, somehow, full of people who tell the truth out loud. You keep walking, past the steps and the old man and the sound of words brave enough to survive taxation. The road narrows again, not out of design, just fatigue. Like the city's bones are a little too tired to hold themselves wide anymore. On a balcony above, someone shakes out a blanket. Dust falls in slow spirals, catching the sunlight like it wants to linger. A voice calls up, careful, that dust might be taxable. Another voice answers with laughter. You smile. A few blocks ahead, the buildings change again, more orderly now, but less alive. Sharper corners, straighter lines, uniform windows. These are the administrative quarters. You can tell by the way no one lingers. Even their footsteps sound purposeful. You don't plan to stop, but a low voice catches you. Looking for work? It comes from a man seated beside a set of stairs. He has a table in front of him, small, plain, covered in ledgers. Not scrolls, bound books, thick ones, like they've been absorbing secrets for years. You shake your head. Not yet, you add. He nods like that's a fine answer. People think jobs start with the job, he says. They don't. They start with paperwork. You glance at the books. Are you an accountant? He chuckles. Closer to a translator. I read Roman. Then I turn it into human. He flips open a ledger and shows you a page. The tariff on stone imports was raised last week. Doesn't matter to most folks. But it means the bricklayer 3 blocks down has to charge more. Which means fewer houses get patched. Which means more drafts in winter. Which means more people get sick. Which means the healer raises her prices. He closes the book. And all of that started with one line of ink in this book. You sit beside him. He slides another ledger over. This one tracks permits. The council likes to issue a lot of those. Makes them feel like they're solving things. You flip through a few pages. The handwriting is sharp, tired. He points to an entry. Permit #983. Permission for a bakery to extend its awning 2 feet over the sidewalk. You look up. That seems harmless. He nods. Until the neighbor files a complaint because her herbs don't get enough sun anymore. You close the book. So you're not just keeping records. He smiles. I'm telling stories. The quiet kind. The kind that live in margins and receipts. A woman approaches late 20s maybe, carrying a stack of folded garments. She places a small coin on the table. No fee today, he says gently. She smiles. I'm not paying, I'm remembering. He nods. She leaves. You ask, what was that about? He leans back. She used to work with her father. Laundered cloth for half the city. Then a mold tax came into effect. Every cloth storage room needed to be certified. They couldn't afford it. Shut down within a month. You glance at the coin. It's not much, he says. But sometimes that's all dignity costs. The sunlight has shifted now, longer and redder, like the day's trying to excuse itself without saying goodbye. You rise. He doesn't ask your name, doesn't offer his. He just nods toward the street ahead. Keep moving, but don't stop listening. Rome will whisper if you let it. And you do. You walk again, the sound of your steps folding into the ledger of the city, another footnote, another untaxed breath. For now, evening in Rome isn't quiet, it just changes pitch. The sounds shift, less metal, more murmurs, less clatter, more creak. A different kind of busy. People headed home. People trying to stretch the day before curfews begin to pretend they're not curfews. You follow the flow, carried along like a pebble in a shallow stream, until you reach a long, crooked plaza that serves as an unofficial evening market. There are no signs, no stalls, just blankets laid out on the stones, weighted with goods and guarded by tired eyes. It's not what's sold here that's remarkable. It's what's not said. A man offers you a slice of roasted onion, skewered on a stick. No name, he mutters. No scale. Pay what you think it's worth. You do. He nods, and that's the end of it. Two women near a cracked statue are trading hairpins and stories. One's telling the other about how she faked a coin inspection last week just to avoid a vendor tax. They laugh the way people laugh when the alternative is bitterness. You stop by a stall that's not really a stall, just a cloth with small hand mirrors laid out like rare fruit. The woman tending them is older, but her eyes are sharp. "You don't strike me as the vain type," she says without looking up. You smile, just curious. "These aren't for vanity," she says. "They're for remembering your face." You pick one up. The glass is slightly warped enough to make the reflection seem older, or maybe just more honest. "I used to sell these on commission," she says. "Filed with the artisan's registry. Tracked sales, paid the tax. Until someone decided mirrors count as tools of illusion." You blink. "Luxury item now," she explains. "Officially, got pushed into a different bracket." She waves a hand over the small collection. "Now I sell them as decorative tokens for reflective storytelling." You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. "The trick isn't avoiding the law. It's dancing beside it without stepping on its toes." You buy one, not because you need it, because you know what it cost her to keep offering them. You walk a bit farther and sit near a wall where the stones are still warm from the Sunday people pass. Not hurried, not still, somewhere in between. You see a boy, maybe 10, holding a crate of figs and shouting prices that change mid-sentence depending on who walks past. You see a man kneeling beside a cart, carefully repainting the letters on his business name, adding flourishes, curling the tail of an R to make it seem like he's upgraded, when all he's done is survive. You see a girl leading an old blind dog down the alley with a ribbon of twine and a face full of purpose. And then, you see someone who looks a little like you, tired, quiet, holding a piece of flatbread in one hand and a parchment in the other. Reading, chewing, living. You don't speak to them, but they glance at you as they pass, and there's something in their eyes that says, "Still here, me too." You nod just barely. There's a moment, right then, when the weight of the city catches you off guard. Not the noise, not the fees, just the constant, unspoken pressure to endure, to keep walking, keep paying, keep explaining. You almost feel like giving up, but then someone nearby laughs, not bitter, not forced, just full. You look over. It's the fig seller. He's collapsed beside his crate, breathless from laughing at something his friend said. You don't know the joke. You don't need to. You just sit there for another few minutes, letting the night come in gently around you, letting yourself believe for a little while that staying here is worth the wait, not because it's easy, but because somehow, against the odds, people still find ways to laugh. The sky above Rome has softened into a blend of pink and dull gold, like someone forgot to clean their paintbrush. The wind picks up, gentle and lazy, curling down alleyways like it's too tired to rush anywhere. You wander, slowly now. Your legs ache not from distance, but from dodging systems. It's a different kind of fatigue, one that sits behind your eyes and between your ribs. You're not sure where you're going anymore. That's when the smell hits you. Bread. Real bread. Not the flat, cracked ration slices or the dusty loaves passed off as rustic. This smells like someone still believes in yeast and warmth and patience. You follow it instinctively and find a small bakery. Tucked between two empty buildings, the shop seems to pulse with light and quiet effort. The baker, a man with arms like tree trunks and eyes like he hasn't seen a break in 3 years, waves you in without a word. There's a loaf on the counter, just one. No labels, no price. You point to it. He nods. You reach for your coin pouch. He holds up a hand. "No charge," he says. "At least, not the usual kind." You pause. "Then what's the charge?" He shrugs. "Tell me what made you tired today." You blink. He waits. You tell him about the cloth seller, the mirror woman, the boy running through tariff windows, the man who told you Rome was a ledger written in size. You talk more than you expect to. You don't look up while you do. When you finish, the loaf is in your hands, still warm, heavy with meaning. The baker gives you a nod. "I ask everyone," he says. "One story per loaf. Sometimes they lie, sometimes they cry. You just told the truth. That's worth dinner." You step outside, stunned a little by the softness of it all. Then you hear it. Parchment check. A voice brisk, official cuts through the air. A man in a dull gray tunic, holding a stylus and a board, marches up to the bakery. You flatten yourself against the wall. He scans the doorway, frowns. "You're distributing goods again." The baker wipes his hands on a towel. "I'm feeding stories." You know that doesn't exempt you. It should. They lock eyes for a moment. Then the inspector writes something down and walks away. The baker sighs. You step back in. "That going to cost you?" He shrugs. "Probably, but bread costs less than silence." You hold up the loaf. "I'll make it count." He grins. You continue walking, the loaf tucked under your arm like a sleeping cat. The streets are thinner, now less traffic, more shadows. You round a corner and nearly collide with an elderly woman hauling 2 baskets filled with what looks like stone. You apologize, step aside. She grunts. "Don't worry, they're heavier than I am." You offer to carry one. She lets you, with a nod that feels like permission and a test. You walk in silence until she stops at a doorway, framed by broken tiles and ivy. She gestures at the basket. "Inspection samples. Temple steps. Every 10 years they pretend to check if they're still holy enough." You blink. "Holy enough?" She smirks. "Not really. Just seeing if the stone still qualifies for heritage funding." You don't ask how stone qualifies. You just hand her the basket. She nods once, deeply. As you turn to go, she calls out, "Don't drop the bread." You glance down. "How did you?" "Everyone who comes from that bakery looks taller." You smile and walk on. The bread still warm. The street now quieter. And for the first time all day, your steps feel like yours. You've stopped checking where you are. The streets curve without apology, as they always have, built long before logic and right angles had any say in the matter. But you don't mind. Not now. You found the rhythm, or rather, the rhythm has found you. Rome doesn't need maps. It needs patience. The loaf of bread under your arm is cooling, but it still holds its shape, its weight, and maybe even its meaning. You find a low wall at the edge of what might have once been a garden. The soil's cracked. A few wild herbs cling to the edge of a broken planter. But there's room to sit, and right now, that's all the luxury you need. Across the street, a lamplighter works his way down the row. No torch, no flourish, just a slow climb, a practiced flick, and a brief pause as each flame catches and remembers how to live. It's not art, but it's close. You watch him move, methodical and calm, until he notices you. "Good evening," he says. Not loud, just enough. You return the greeting. He studies you for a second. "Not from this street, are you?" You shake your head. He nods like that explains everything. "Then this spot's yours tonight." You gesture at the flames. "They always catch on the first try?" He grins. "Only when someone's watching." He keeps moving. You sit there for a while, letting the street grow dim and gold, as each lamp joins its neighbors in quiet service. No fanfare, just light. A soft scraping sound breaks the silence. A girl, maybe 12, pushes a basket down the road. Inside, scraps of cloth, bits of wax, a few crusts of bread. You don't stop her. She stops herself. "Is that real bread?" she asks, pointing. You nod. From the corner bakery? You nod again. She sighs. He makes the best crust. You tear off a chunk and hold it out. She hesitates. It's not a test, you say. She takes it and sits beside you like she was always meant to. I collect leftovers, she explains, chewing. Stuff people throw out but don't mean to. Some nights I do all right. You glance at her basket. And other nights? She shrugs. I light candles. Listen to street talk. Pretend it's all part of a plan. You ask where she sleeps. She points to a shuttered shop. The awning's wide enough to keep dry. Mostly. You tear off another piece of bread and pass it to her. She chews slower this time. You ever feel like you're invisible? She asks. You think about it. Not quite invisible, you say. Just folded into the page. She nods. Yeah, that's what it feels like. You sit in silence after that. She hums a tune you don't know. One of the lamps flickers, but holds. Eventually, she stands. Thanks for the bread, she says. Thanks for the company. She smiles. Tell him I said hi if you go back. You nod. She pushes her basket onward, disappearing into the folds of the city. You stay seated a little longer. There's something about Rome at night, it isn't quieter, really. But the noise changes shape, becomes softer, less urgent. Like the city agrees to let you breathe for a while before it remembers what it costs. You close your eyes, just for a moment. When you open them, a cat sits at your feet. It blinks slowly, like it owns the wall, the bread, and maybe even your story. You offer it a crumb. It sniffs, rejects it, and walks away. You smile. Still Rome, still strange, still surviving. You rise from the wall gently, stretching out legs that feel heavier than they should. It's not the walking. It's the weight of all the stories you've picked up along the way, small, quiet ones, layered like coin in a purse. The street is nearly empty now. Lamps flicker above, windows glow faintly behind shutters. Rome at night is less a city and more a whisper in motion. You turn down a narrow lane that seems unfamiliar, but that's the thing about this city, you stop looking for landmarks after a while. You start following mood instead. Ahead, a man is setting up a small table. Not a vendor, not quite a performer. He lays out scrolls with care, smoothing the edges as though they bruise easily. He lights a small lamp, then sits. You approach. He looks up. You here for the silence? You pause. I don't know yet. He nods. That's fair. He gestures to a wooden sign propped beside him. It reads, 10 minutes of uninterrupted silence. 1 coin. Half price if you don't speak either. You smile despite yourself. He continues, I don't sell food. Or stories. Just quiet. A little fenced-off space where the city doesn't ask anything of you. You glance behind him. There's a chair, an empty one, tucked into the shadows of a curtained alcove. You can sit, he says, or stand, or just close your eyes. I'll keep time. You hand him a coin and step behind the curtain. It's nothing special, just a worn chair, a bit of fabric, and the quietest space you've found all day. You sit, and for 10 whole minutes no questions, no duties, no performance. You just exist. When you step back out, he nods once. Doesn't ask how it was. Doesn't need to. You thank him. He shrugs. People think I'm strange for charging for nothing, but really, it's not nothing. It's the only thing most people don't know how to give. You leave him there, watching the street with a kind of patient reverence, like it's a prayer that hasn't ended yet. A few turns later, you pass a small group of musicians, 3, maybe 4, playing faint notes into the night air. Not loudly, not for coins, just playing. One of them sees you and smiles. No tax on music after dark, he whispers. Yet, you linger a while. The notes are uneven, but kind. A little out of tune, but so is everything here. Someone hands you a fig. You don't see who. You don't ask why. You eat it slowly. And somewhere in that moment between the warm fig, the off-key melody, and the rhythm of people simply existing, you start to understand something. Rome didn't survive on power alone. It survived because people found space between the systems, between the tolls, between the stamps and scrolls. People like the baker, the girl with the basket, the old man on the steps, and maybe even you. Because tonight, even silence was worth something, and you paid for it gladly. The night is fully here now. Rome doesn't go dark so much as it softens, like someone has draped a thin cloth over the city, muting its colors and mumbles, but leaving the shape intact. You keep walking, not because you're lost, but because you don't quite want to be found. You pass what used to be a bathhouse. The sign's still there, cracked in two, with one half resting against a weed-choked wall. Someone scribbled over it with charcoal. Still warm, if you squint. A man sits outside the door, middle-aged, cloak patched, hands ink-stained. He's scribbling on a torn piece of parchment with a stylus that looks chewed at both ends. Writing something? You ask. He glances up, trying to, but the rules keep changing faster than I can finish a sentence. You sit beside him. Once I wrote dramas, he says. Sonnets, tall tales. Then someone decided I needed clearance. For imagination? He nods. Had to register as a public sentiment influencer. Fancy way of saying they wanted a cut. You gesture at the parchment. Still writing though. He shrugs. I write now on scraps. For me, sometimes I leave them around the city, behind bricks, under benches. If someone finds one and smiles, it's worth more than a full amphitheater. He shows you a scrap, a tiny poem, just a few lines. You are not the dust you step on, you are the print you leave behind. You hand it back, he tucks it into his sleeve. I've seen people quote things I wrote, he says, not knowing it was me, not knowing I wasn't allowed to write it. That's the best kind of legacy. You ask if he misses the stage. Every day, he replies. But at least this way, no one taxes the applause. You rise and thank him. He offers you another scrap blank this time. Write something when you're ready, he says, even if you never show it. You tuck it into your pocket. A few streets later, the buildings lean in close again, tired, familiar, listening. There's a glow ahead, not fire, not lamp. Paper. Dozens of small sheets pinned to a wooden frame. A makeshift wall of stories, poems, quotes, and declarations, some messy, some neat, all anonymous. No names, no prices. Just thoughts. You read a few. Don't forget to breathe, even when the tax on air arrives. My mother kept her joy in a jar, opened it only on feast days. I opened it today, just because. Rome charges for everything, except kindness. That's still a loophole. You add your scrap to the wall. Nothing written yet, but that's okay. You're still deciding what story you want to tell. It's late now. Not just dark, but late in a way only cities can be. The noise has ebbed into distant lull. Rome hums under your feet like a resting animal. Not asleep, just pretending. You're tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind you earn. The good kind, the heavy kind. And still, your feet move. At the next corner, you find a man sitting on a three-legged stool, cobbling shoes by lantern light. His hands are thick, his nails blackened, but his movements are careful, delicate, almost loving. You pause. He doesn't look up. You're not from this alley, he says, almost amused. You nod. Just passing through, that's what they all say, until their souls fall off. You smile. He gestures to your sandals. Those look like they've seen some things. You lift one foot, he grunts. Cracked, dry, good story shoes. You sit without being asked. He pulls a small jar from under the bench and starts dabbing something fragrant and oily onto the leather. You say nothing. He doesn't ask for payment. After a while, he says, my father made boots for soldiers. I make repairs for wanderers. Different wars, same blisters. You ask, do many come by? he nods. Mostly at night. People who walk too far or stay too long. The ones who don't mind quiet. He rubs the oil into the strap. Used to be a permit for this sort of thing. Street-side services. They said I was impeding aesthetic flow. You laugh. He doesn't. I kept working. Just stopped using a sign. You look around. There is no sign. Just him, the stool, the lamp, the smell of leather and lavender. He says, they can't tax what they can't define. You nod. Clever. No, he says. Just tired of waiting for permission to help. You sit there a while longer, letting the silence settle. Eventually he finishes. Your sandals feel different, firmer, calmer somehow. You reach for a coin. He holds up a hand. Next time, walk like your feet matter. You thank him. He waves you off. You walk on. The road beneath you feels gentler, or maybe you're finally letting it hold you. Ahead, a small fire flickers in a metal dish. Not a bonfire, just enough to warm the hands of the woman crouched beside it. She's feeding scraps of dried herb into the flames, murmuring under her breath. You pause again. She looks up. Don't worry, it's not a spell, just memories. You kneel beside her. She holds out a tiny pouch. Smell? You do. Rosemary, thyme, and something older. Earthy, like sun-warmed stone. Burning the leftovers, she says. The ends of things, the pieces that didn't sell. If you don't burn them, they spoil. If you do, they speak. You ask what they say. They say, we were part of something once. You both stare into the fire. I used to teach, she says. Herbs. Healing. Then someone said I needed a license to say what plants could do. I didn't have one, so now I let them talk instead. The flames flicker. Pop. Settle. She passes you a small bundle of dried leaves, tied with thread. For your pocket, she says. For later. Just don't label it. You tuck it away carefully. And for the first time, you realize Rome is filled with these people. These quiet resistors. These keepers of memory and kindness and weariness. No signs, no permits. Just hands and fire and the soft, stubborn glow of survival. The roads narrow again, not because they're small, but because night stretches everything out, makes even open space feel tucked in, private. You find yourself in a part of Rome that doesn't seem to need names. No signs, no districts, just the hum of things that have lasted longer than they should. You pause at a stone step with no building behind it. It's just there. And for some reason, it feels like the right place to stop. As you sit, an old man walks past, dragging a handcart filled with something heavy wrapped in canvas. He grunts, but doesn't complain. His sandals slap rhythmically against the stone. He notices you and nods. Quiet night. You return the nod. He stops anyway. Used to be a well here. Long time ago. People still sit though. You ask what happened to the well. Dried up. Or was covered. Or maybe taxed so many times it gave up. You chuckle. He smiles. Still, the stone remembers where the water was. That counts for something. You watch him disappear into the dark. You sit there longer than planned, until your eyes adjust to the dark like it's a second kind of vision. Rome looks different in this shade. Less proud, more tired, but softer too, more honest. A girl passes with a basket of wax, shaped into crude candles, some leaning sideways. She doesn't say anything, just leaves one by your foot as she passes. No sales. Pitch. No price tag, just a gesture. You light it with a splinter you'd tucked from the fire earlier. Its glow is faint, enough to show you the worn lines in the stone. The scuffed toe prints of hundreds of people who also needed to stop, to sit, to breathe. Eventually, a man approaches from the other side of the street. He's dressed simply, not a worker, not a merchant, just someone. He stops a few paces away. You found the seat, he says. You nod. Didn't know it had a name. He smiles. It doesn't. That's why it's still here. He sits beside you without asking. You've walked a lot today, he says. You don't ask how he knows. He continues, people think tariffs are about money, but really, they're about motion. They make you slow down, hesitate, rethink, recalculate. You glance at him, he's not quoting anyone. He's lived this. They don't just tax goods, he adds. They tax will. Make enough obstacles, and people stop trying. You nod. But they didn't. He smiles gently. Not yet. He reaches into his coat and pulls out a tiny folded piece of parchment. On it, a map. Not a detailed one. Just lines, loops, and small symbols. Places where people still offer things freely, he says. Bread, kindness, music, laughter. A bath, if you know who to ask. You study the map. He says, it's not illegal. Not yet. But don't carry it openly. You tuck it carefully behind the candle. Then you ask, why keep track? He watches the flame for a long moment before answering. Because when the walls finally get too high, someone has to remember where the doors used to be. You look at the map again. Not perfect, not permanent, but still warm. You both sit in silence. Above, a lamp buzzes faintly, moths dancing in tired spirals. And below, the flame between you sways like it's listening. You part ways with the man and his quiet map, candle tucked into your pouch now, still faintly warm. You walk slower, not out of weariness, but care. Like each step is trying not to disturb something asleep beneath the stone. Rome feels different now, not smaller, but closer. You pass under a vine-wrapped archway that sags slightly in the middle, as if it, too, is tired of holding things up. Just beyond, you hear humming. Low, steady, familiar in a way you can't quite place. It leads you to a courtyard where 6 or 7 women sit, weaving together but separate, each at her own station. Fingers moving like they've been practicing this rhythm for years. No audience, no sign, just threads and quiet industry. You stay back, watching. One of them, without looking up, says, you can watch, but don't ask about tariffs. We've had enough of that word for one night. You raise both hands. No questions, just watching. She hums again, same tune, softer now. Another adds, used to be, we made festival banners. For processions. Theater curtains, things that lifted the city's heart. Now we make sleeves. Someone else mutters. And leg wraps. And cloth patches for scroll carriers. You ask, do you miss the banners? The first woman smiles without stopping. Every day. But threads go where the hand leads them. A younger one, maybe 16, looks up from her loom. We still make them. The banners, just smaller, hidden, for windowsills and under tunics. You raise an eyebrow. She smirks. The trick isn't avoiding the tax. It's making something no one knows how to charge for. The oldest among them speaks soft, gravel-voiced. Beauty without label, color without permit, pattern with no declared meaning. That's how you outlast a tariff. You sit for a moment on a low stone bench, the air around you filled with the soft click and stretch of woven resistance. Before you leave, the young one hands you a small square of deep green cloth. No stamp, no tag. For luck, she says, or concealment, depends what you need. You fold it carefully and move on. As you round a corner, you hear 2 men arguing, not angrily, more like friends exhausted by their own opinions. It's not about money, one says. It's about control. If they can tax how much salt I carry, they can tax my sweat. The other laughs. Then they should pay me every time I worry. That's more labor than my job. You smile as you pass. They nod without breaking stride, still arguing. It's late now, very late. The stars above Rome seem unsure if they're supposed to shine or fade. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows too early or too confused. You sit one last time, this time on the edge of a fountain so worn that water barely drips from the spout. It's more suggestion than stream. A boy, maybe 7, wanders by holding a stick with a scrap of cloth tied to the top. Parade's over, he tells you solemnly. You missed it. You grin. Who was in it? Me, he says. And my dog. But he left early. Said there were too many fees. You laugh. He beams, then skips away, the flag fluttering like a memory. And in that moment, you realize Rome hasn't stopped celebrating. It's just doing it smaller, quieter, where the tax collectors can't hear. The road beneath your feet grows smoother now, like even the stone is tired of arguing. You hear a soft rustle behind a wall of ivy, then the brief chirp of a bird that should be asleep. Rome's quieter here, not silent, just hushed. You round a corner and find yourself in a tucked-away square barely more than a widening in the road. There's a tree in the center, thin branches stretched out like it's trying to remember what shade felt like in the daytime, and scattered around it, lanterns, little ones, not official, not uniform, just bowls of soft light resting on the ground, placed gently as if by instinct. A few people linger, older couples, quiet vendors, one man tuning a lyre without playing it. It's not a market, not really. More like a pause. Someone hands you a cup of something warm and fragrant. You don't see who. It smells faintly of honey and mint, and you sip it without asking questions. This is the kind of place where asking would ruin it. You sit on the edge of the square, letting your shoulders drop, letting your jaw unclench, letting the night wrap itself around you without asking for your name. Two women near the tree are laughing, not loudly, just enough to bend the air. One says, "I keep telling him, no one wants extra paperwork with their flowers." The other replies, "He said petals might count as organic waste, needs a disposal permit." They laugh again, softer now. A dog pads through the light, pauses beside your foot, and gives a single huff before lying down. No leash, no collar, just an animal that knows where warmth lives. You finish your drink. You didn't realize how cold your fingers were until they weren't. Someone plays 3 notes on a flute. Not a song, just a test. A question. No one answers, and that feels fine too. Above, the stars have finally decided to be stars. You stretch your legs, not to move, just to feel them. The lanterns flicker, a breeze stirs. One of the vendors begins quietly folding blankets, not because anyone asked him to, but because the night is moving toward stillness. And for the first time all day, you don't think about where your next step leads. You don't think about scrolls or permits or wait. You just are, in the glow, in the hush, in the moment between a sigh and sleep. You stay in the square a little longer, not because there's anything left to see, but because some places feel like exhaling, like the walls themselves are giving you permission to stop carrying things for a while. A vendor packs away hand-painted fans, humming a lullaby too old for words. A child nearby balances on one foot, then the other, pretending they're a bird, or maybe a dancer, or maybe just someone who hasn't been told they can't be anything yet. The wind shifts, cooler now, but not sharp, not biting, more like a blanket being pulled up gently to your chin. You stretch once, slowly, and rise. The dog that had settled near you is gone. The stars above you flicker slightly, as if waving, and the road ahead is less a path and more an invitation. You follow it. Your footsteps echo just enough to remind you you're real, but not enough to disturb the peace that's pooled in the city's corners. You pass a home with open shutters and the smell of stew lingering in the air. A candle flickers on the windowsill. A cat sits beside it, regal and bored, the guardian of this tiny, perfect moment. Down the lane, someone is singing, not words, not a song, just sound. A melody made of breath and memory. You don't recognize it. You don't need to. You pass a laundry line strung low between 2 walls. Soft robes sway like ghosts who've made peace with their pasts. Further on, you find a fountain smaller than the last, barely a trickle, but it burbles with determination, like it remembers when it was young and proud and full of coins. You sit beside it. A man nearby leans against the stone, eyes closed, face tilted to the sky. He opens one eye when he hears you. "Long day?" he asks. You nod. "Long city," he adds, and you both chuckle. "Does it ever sleep?" You ask. He shrugs. Bits of it, like people. Never all at once, but always enough. You listen to the fountain for a while. He says, I used to run messages. Long ago. Up and down these streets. Fast. Always fast. Until one day, I just stopped. Why? He smiles. Someone told me that not everything urgent is important, and Rome never thanked me for hurrying. You sit with that for a while. Then he pushes something across the stone toward you, a thin slice of dried fruit wrapped in cloth. For the morning, he says, if you're still here. You thank him. He nods once and disappears, into the night, like he was never meant to be more than a line in your story. You hold the fruit in your hand, and something about the gesture, small, kind, untraced, settles deep in your chest. Rome may be loud, it may be heavy, but it breathes. And right now, in this slow, fragile hour, you are breathing with it. The fruit sits in your hand for a while, warming slightly from your skin. You don't unwrap it yet. There's a strange comfort in just holding it. Proof that someone, somewhere, thought you might be hungry in the morning. You walk slower now. The streets are almost empty, not abandoned, just respectfully quiet. The kind of quiet that cities earn after enough centuries of shouting. You pass an open window with soft yellow light pouring out, flickering slightly. Inside, a woman snoozes in a chair beside a weaving loom, her head tilted, a strand of yarn still wrapped loosely around her fingers. The rhythm of the shuttle must have sung her to sleep. You keep walking. There's a bench ahead. You sit. It's still warm from someone else. You imagine their shape. Imagine the conversation they might have had. Or didn't. Maybe they just sat and exhaled, like you're doing now. From somewhere nearby, you hear a low clink of glass, someone washing up for the night. A lullaby hums from a floor above, the kind of tune that doesn't need words, the kind that was never written down, only passed on breath to breath. You let your head tilt back. The stars are still out, still curious. You whisper to no one in particular, I made it through the day. The city doesn't answer, but it feels like it heard you. You hear slow footsteps, not yours, not urgent, not official. A man and woman pass, each carrying a basket, not speaking. But every now and then, they glance at each other and smile like they've shared some joke 20 years old and still funny. You think, that's the kind of peace you want to grow into. Ahead, a curtain sways gently from a second-story window. Behind it, a candle dances and casts shadows of herbs drying on a line. Mint, thyme, maybe lavender. You breathe deeper. The night tastes clean here. Not fresh, not new. But kept, watched over. You remember the square with the quiet musicians, the baker who traded bread for stories, the girl with the wax basket, the man with no sign who fixed your shoes without asking your name. You remember the tax ledgers that sounded like poetry, the banner weavers who spoke through thread, the map, the smile, the laughter that slipped between alley walls like it had nowhere better to be. You remember Rome, not the empire, not the power, not the marble, but the people, the softness beneath the stone, the grace of surviving without permission. You don't know when your eyes start to close, but your body knows it's safe now. Your heartbeat slows. The stars don't fade, but they blur, just slightly. The stone beneath you feels like home, not because it's warm, but because you've walked long enough to let it be. And somewhere, in the gentle breathing of the night, you realize you are no longer passing through this story. You've become part of it. You're not sure how long you've been sitting, maybe minutes, maybe hours. Time in Rome isn't measured in shadows, not at this hour. It's measured in breaths, in the number of times you've felt your shoulders drop, in how long it's been since your last worry. You rise not because you need to go, but because the night seems to invite a last little walk, a winding down kind of motion. Gentle, unguarded, you pass a row of laundry lines left up, even though there's no Sunday. Some of the fabric flutters anyway, catching the breeze like old flags in a quiet war that's long since ended. The fabric smells faintly of smoke and lavender. You tuck your hands into your sleeves, not from cold, just comfort. The streets have stopped pretending to be streets, they're paths now. Memory lanes, storylines. The city doesn't expect anything from you anymore. Not now. It's done asking. It's just listening. You pass a cracked basin where someone once watered plants. A rusted ladle rests nearby. One single daisy has bloomed in the corner, defiant and sleepy. You nod to it like an old friend. A shutter above creaks gently open. Someone coughs once, then closes it again. A small ritual, proof of life. Further on, you find a stairway that goes nowhere in particular. Just a soft incline, a few carved steps, worn in the middle where sandals once pressed down again and again. You sit on the second step. Just because. The fig you were given earlier is still in your pouch. You take it out now, break it in half. It's sweeter than expected. Sticky in a way that lingers on your fingers. You eat it slowly, like it matters. Because it does. You hear the faint clang of wind chimes somewhere beyond the next wall. Or maybe it's just a metal ladle swaying from a clothesline. Either way, it's music enough. Rome's no longer talking. It's humming. Softly, deeply, like a lullaby meant for stone and sky. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine what tomorrow might look like. You can't see it clearly, but it doesn't scare you. You've made it this far. You've listened. You've sat beside bakers, cobblers, poets, and mothers. You've walked without map or purpose and somehow ended up somewhere that feels earned. You feel a breeze against your face, warm still but sleepy. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. And somewhere far behind you, or maybe far ahead, a rooster decides to test its voice again. Just once. No one shushes it. The city's too tired for scolding. Too full of peace. The city is a hush now. Even the wind seems to have pulled a blanket over itself. The shutters don't rattle anymore. The footsteps are gone. What's left is the kind of stillness you only notice after moving for too long. You walk a little farther, not out. You need just a kind of ritual. Like tracing a circle before sleep, giving your thoughts something gentle to do before they dissolve. There's an arch ahead. Old, cracked, covered in vines. It doesn't lead to anything grand. Just a small courtyard where nothing seems to happen. And maybe that's the point. You step beneath it. The air shifts, softer here, warmer even. Not because of fire or body heat, but because this is one of those pockets in the world where the weight lifts, if only for a while. There's a bench under a fig tree. You sit. You don't check the time. The stars are still above, and that's enough. Somewhere nearby, water drips in a slow, patient rhythm. Not a leak, not a fountain. Just the earth doing what it's always done, remembering. You tilt your head back and close your eyes. And Rome, in its quietest voice, tells you, you've done enough for one day. You think of all the things you carried, all the lines you stood in, the coins you counted, the names you didn't say aloud, the questions you swallowed, the crumbs of kindness passed between strangers who didn't owe you anything and gave you everything anyway. You think of the bread that fed your story, the cloth that hid your worry, the whisper of music in forgotten alleys. You feel all of it settle in your chest, not heavy, not sharp, just real, yours now, part of the tale. And then, you don't think at all. You drift, still sitting but not quite awake, not quite dreaming either. The stone beneath you is no longer hard, the air no longer moves. And even the thoughts begin to trail off like lanterns floating downstream, soft, slow, glowing smaller and smaller. You are not walking anymore. You are being carried. And the city that once weighed on your back now holds you like a story it's proud to tell. Somewhere nearby, a window creaks open. You don't open your eyes. There's no need. The breeze that follows carries nothing urgent, just the softest trace of fig, blossoms and warm stone. Someone laughs gently, not near you, but not far. The kind of laugh people let slip when they think no one is listening. The kind reserved for good memories, not jokes. You shift slightly on the bench, but only so your shoulder leans into the backrest. The fig tree above drops a single leaf beside you, so lightly it doesn't even stir your sleeve. Rome exhales, and you are inside that breath. Somewhere, the rooster tries again, less confident this time, almost shy. As if even he knows the city deserves a few minutes more of sleep. You smile, barely, because you're not in a hurry anymore. You're not a traveler, not a merchant, not someone trying to squeeze value from the marrow of a day. You're just here, and here is enough. You feel the map still tucked in your pouch. You won't need it now, not tonight. Maybe not tomorrow either. The doors it marked will still be there. Rome forgets nothing, but it forgives in small ways. A lantern flickers behind your closed eyelids. You don't open them. The light is enough. The way it colors the air orange and soft around the edges. It hums, not like flame, but like thought. You let go of what you meant to do next. You let go of what didn't get done today. You let go of questions, of prices, of names. The city doesn't want anything else from you. Not now. A cat settles near your foot again. You don't move. Maybe it's the same one. Maybe it's a different one. Rome's cats answer to no one. You feel the weight of the day slide off like a cloak. And beneath it, your breath. Steady, gentle, almost a lullaby in its own right. You could open your eyes. You could stand. You could take one more step, find one more turn, press the night just a little further, but you don't. You stay. Because here under the fig tree, beside the broken fountain, near the light that never asks questions, you've finally arrived somewhere soft. And sleep is already reaching for you. No forms, no fee, no ledger. Just a hand, warm and unhurried, leading you across the last threshold of this story. The candle you never lit flickers anyway. In your mind, or in some quiet window, it's hard to tell now. It sways gently, like it's rocking you. And you, no longer wandering, no longer watching, are slowly becoming weightless. The fig tree breathes beside you. You can almost feel its roots stretch out beneath the stone, whispering to the earth, trading stories with the vines on the other side of the square. A bird stirs, not to fly, just to shift its feathers. Even dreams here move slowly, politely, as if asking permission. You feel a warmth against your arm. The bench, maybe, the ghost of the sun that once touched it. Or maybe it's the story folding around you like a soft shawl, threaded with memory and kindness and all the quiet that Rome held just for you. No one calls your name. No one needs you now. And that's okay. The stories are still moving, but they're not pulling you anymore. You've given what you needed to. You've listened. You've stayed long enough for the rhythm to match your breath. Somewhere in the back of your thoughts, you hear the baker's laugh again, the girl's humming, the merchant's slow, precise speech. You taste the mint tea from the square, feel the pressed leather on your feet, smell lavender drifting from someone else's laundry. It's all still there, woven into the corners of this night, tucked gently into the folds of Rome, not held like luggage, but kept like music, soft, shapeless, carried. You are not alone. You never were. Even the stone beneath you remembers. And if it had a voice, it would murmur, "You were here." The sky is beginning to pale, just barely, a single thread of silver pulling at the hem of the dark. But the stars, some of them are still visible, not gone, just resting. Like you. You haven't moved in a while. Not because you forgot how, but because the city asked nothing more of you. You've walked its stories, tasted its quiet, sat in its forgotten corners, listened to its soft rebellion, and somewhere in the middle of tariffs, tolls, bread crusts, whispered poems, and candlelit benches, you became part of the fabric, not stitched, just pressed gently into place. And now, as the night folds inward, you're allowed to fold with it. The fig tree rustles once, a leaf drops and lands beside you. You don't open your eyes, there's no need, because the story has closed its final page, not with a bang, not with a triumph, but with a kind nod, a full belly, a quieter heart. And one last thought. For all its tolls and tariffs, its scrolls and stamps, its long lines and louder voices, Rome never charged you for rest. Not really. And tonight, you took it. Freely, warmly. Wrapped in the lull of a city that remembers too much, but judges nothing. And if tomorrow, the sun rises over the rooftops, and you find yourself still curled beneath this fig tree, dream heavy and smiling, well, at least you can say this much. They taxed a lot of things. But not your sleep. Good night, traveler, you've earned it.